My name is Katarina Harris. I'm 29 years old, and 3 days ago, I walked out of the apartment I shared with my boyfriend Jonathan while he was out drinking with his friends. It still doesn't feel real. My hands were shaking then. They're still shaking now, not from regret, but from how long it took me to finally do it. It started Friday night. Murphy's Bar, the usual crowd. Me, Jonathan, his best friend Liam, my friend Maya, and a couple of others from work. The music was loud, glasses clinking, neon lights bleeding over everyone's faces. Jonathan had that easy grin he uses when he wants something or someone to like him. The waitress came by our table, a pretty brunette, probably mid-20s. Jonathan turned on his charm like a light switch. "Hey, didn't you serve us last time? You've got the best memory in this place." She laughed, twirling her pen, and wrote his order down like he was the only one there. Maya raised an eyebrow at me, but I smiled it off. I've seen him flirt before. He calls it harmless. When she came back with our drinks, she placed Jonathan's beer down last. Their fingers brushed on purpose, I could tell. She slipped a small piece of paper onto the napkin. "Her number." Jonathan laughed. "Wow, that's bold." Liam elbowed him. "Guess you still got it, man." The guys laughed. And I just stared at the number. "Are you planning to use it?" I asked, my voice calm but my chest tightening. Jonathan smirked like it was a game. "Relax, babe. We're not married. You don't own me." The table went quiet. The air went heavy. I heard Maya's fork clink against her plate. Even Liam looked uncomfortable. I wanted to say something clever, something strong, but all I managed was a quiet, "You're right." He laughed again, that smug, careless sound that used to make me feel safe. Now it just made me feel small. He leaned back, took a long sip of his beer, and changed the subject like nothing happened. I smiled. I even laughed when someone made a joke, because that's what you do when you've learned to keep the peace, pretend it doesn't hurt. But the rest of the night, the words echoed inside me. "We're not married. You don't own me." When we got home later, he went straight to the couch, scrolling on his phone, still chuckling about how jealous I looked. I asked quietly, "Did it make you feel good? Making me look stupid like that?" He didn't even look up. "Oh my God, Katarina, you're still on that." "It was a joke." "A joke at my expense," I said. He sighed, finally glancing up. "You always overreact. It's exhausting." That's when something inside me cracked, not loudly, not all at once, but like a seam splitting from the inside. I looked around our apartment. The couch I paid half for, the bookshelf filled with his vinyls, but my books. The framed print of Venice I bought because he said it made the room feel grown up. I realized I didn't live with him anymore. I lived around him. He fell asleep on the couch that night with his phone on his chest. When it buzzed at 2 a.m., I saw her name on the screen, Sophie Murphy's, and a message. "You're fun. We should grab a drink sometime." My heart didn't break. It just stopped caring. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I started folding clothes into my old duffel bag, the one I hadn't used since college. The sound of fabric sliding into the bag was the only sound in the room. My cat watched from the counter, tail flicking like even she knew something irreversible was happening. I packed quietly. My favorite mug. The coffee maker I bought when he kept forgetting to replace his. My grandmother's blanket. The photo of me and my mom that he always pushed aside to make space for his record player. Every object felt like proof that I existed before him and would again after. I sat on the edge of the bed, our half-shared, half-claimed bed, and stared at the space between the pillows. It looked like a fault line. I thought about all the little things. Him calling me too emotional. Him forgetting my birthday 2 years in a row. Him saying he'd marry me someday, but flinching whenever I mentioned a timeline. I realized that for years, I mistook his indifference for peace. I grabbed a notepad from the kitchen drawer, wrote a dozen versions of the same thing. "You're right. You're free. You don't own me either." None of it felt right. Finally, I wrote, "You were right. I don't." I folded the note, placed it under his phone, and left my key on top. Then I stood there for a moment, long enough to memorize the shape of the apartment without me in it. And I whispered half to myself, "You said I don't own you, Jonathan. But maybe that's the problem. You never wanted to belong anywhere at all." When I stepped outside, the early morning air was sharp and clean. I breathed it in like freedom tasted metallic. Maya was waiting by her car engine running, eyes soft with concern. "You sure about this?" she asked. I nodded. He said we're not married. I'm just believing him. She didn't say anything, just helped me load the bags into the back seat. As we drove away, the city lights blurred past like memories dissolving. I didn't cry. Not then, not anymore. Because sometimes the moment you stop fighting for someone's respect is the first moment you start respecting yourself. I thought leaving would feel dramatic, like a movie moment, rain falling me, walking away in slow motion. But it wasn't. It was quiet. Still. Too still. Maya helped me carry the last box into her car, the wheels squeaking over the concrete. It was almost 2:00 a.m., and the city had gone to sleep. Inside the apartment, everything looked hollow. Half of it was gone. The other half didn't feel like mine anymore. The couch still sat there, with the indentation of Jonathan's body on his favorite side. The bookshelf stood lopsided, my half-empty shelves leaving gaps between his vinyls. The air smelled like him cedar cologne and leftover beer. I walked to the bedroom one last time. His shoes were scattered on the floor. My half of the closet was empty. Even the bed looked uneven, one pillow gone, one left behind. For a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the way he laughed at me in front of everyone. The way he said, "You don't own me." And guilt turned into something sharper. Something like clarity. "Hey," Maya's voice called softly from the living room. "That everything." Almost. I reached for the coffee maker, the one I bought, because Jonathan said his cheap one was fine. He used mine every morning, never cleaned it, always left the filter full. I unplugged it carefully, wiped the countertop where it sat, and placed it in the box. It felt symbolic, taking back something small but necessary. Something that made mornings bearable. "You're taking the coffee maker," Maya asked, teasing. "It's mine." She smiled. "Then take it. Take everything that's yours." I did. The knives I bought, the plates I picked, the blanket he called too sentimental, the framed photo he said didn't match the aesthetic. Piece by piece, I reclaimed what I had once offered him so easily. When the car was packed, I went back for one last thing, my grandmother's jade bracelet. It had fallen behind the dresser. I knelt, reached for it, and when my fingers brushed the cool stone, a wave of memory hit me. Grandma used to say a woman's strength isn't in how long she stays. It's in knowing when to go. I slipped the bracelet on. It felt heavy at first, then steady. At the kitchen counter, I looked down at the note I'd left earlier. "You were right. I don't." So few words, but they carried everything I didn't say. All the swallowed arguments, all the nights I pretended everything was fine. I placed my spare key next to it. Then, on a quiet impulse, I turned off the light. Not slammed it off, just flipped it down gently like closing a chapter. The apartment dimmed, shadows stretching across the walls like old memories being erased. Outside, the night felt different, cooler, lighter. We loaded the last box into the trunk. Maya leaned against the car, studying me. "You sure you're okay?" I nodded. "Ask me tomorrow." She opened the passenger door for me. "You want to crash at my place?" "For a few days." "Good, because I already made up the couch." That's Maya. She always knew what I'd do before I did. We drove in silence for a while. Streetlights streaked across the windshield, painting gold lines on my face. At a red light, Maya finally spoke. "You don't look sad." "I'm not," I said. Then after a pause, "I'm empty, but in a peaceful way." "That's the best kind of empty," she said. I looked out the window. The city looked unfamiliar, like it belonged to a life I didn't live anymore. At Maya's apartment, she made tea. We sat on her balcony, 2 mugs steaming between us. She asked, "Do you think he'll even notice you're gone?" I thought about that for a moment. He'll notice the coffee, the towels, the Wi-Fi bill, but not me. Not really. That's brutal. It's true. I sipped the tea. It tasted bitter, like endings always do. Around 3:00 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Jonathan. The screen lit up in the dark over and over. I watched it until it stopped ringing. Then came the texts. "Where are you? Did you seriously take your stuff? You're being ridiculous, Katerina. We need to talk. This is so immature." Each message made me feel lighter. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I could finally see his words for what they were: small, defensive, empty. I set the phone face down on the table. Maya glanced over. "He's blowing up your phone, huh?" "Yeah. You going to answer?" "No." "Good." But silence can be loud. Louder than any fight we ever had. I lay on Maya's couch that night, staring at the ceiling. Every time I blinked, I saw the kitchen counter, the note, the key, the half-lit room. And for a fleeting moment, I wondered if Jonathan would wake up, see them, and finally understand what he'd done. But I knew he wouldn't. He'd think I was overreacting. He'd tell his friends I was too sensitive. He'd make himself the victim, because that's what people like him do. They rewrite the story so they never have to face it. At sunrise, the light crept across the floor. I watched the sky turn from gray to orange and whispered to no one I didn't leave to hurt him. I left to stop hurting myself. And for the first time in years, the silence felt like peace. By the next afternoon, I had already lost count of how many times Jonathan had called. 36, maybe 37. My phone screen looked like a broken record of his name, each missed call more meaningless than the last. He didn't stop when I didn't answer. He just switched tactics. Text replaced calls. First came confusion, then anger, then guilt, then, predictably, blame. Jonathan. What are you doing, Katerina? This isn't funny. Jonathan, you seriously left over that. Jonathan, I was joking. You're acting insane. Jonathan, I can't believe you're doing this to me. To me, not to us, not to yourself, always to him. Maya walked into the living room, a towel wrapped around her head, still smelling of lavender shampoo. He's still at it. Yep, I said, scrolling through the messages like they belonged to someone else. You gonna block him? I hesitated. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to see what he says next. Why? So he can gaslight you through text too. I looked up at her. She wasn't wrong, so I did it. One thumb press. Block. The silence that followed was strange, like unplugging a machine that had been humming in the background for years. But peace doesn't last long when people love drama. By that evening, the group chat was buzzing. Our mutual friends, people who had laughed at Jonathan's jokes for years, were suddenly investigators. Liam. What the hell happened? Jonathan's freaking out. Rachel. Did you two break up for real? Jonathan forwarded message from someone. She left in the middle of the night like a psycho. Psycho. I stared at the word until it blurred. Maya leaned over reading the screen. Wow. Classic projection. I dropped the phone on the couch. Let him say whatever he wants. I'm done explaining myself to people who never saw what he was really like. Want me to reply? I shook my head. Let silence speak for me. But silence isn't always easy. It gives your thoughts too much room to echo. That night, I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling fans spinning above me. Each rotation whispered fragments of old arguments, old promises, old justifications. You're too emotional, Katerina. You always overthink things. Why can't you just relax? For so long, I believed him. I thought maybe I was too emotional, too reactive, too much. But now, lying there with my phone face down and the world blissfully quiet, I realized something terrifying. He trained me to believe silence was safety, when in truth it was control. The next morning, I scrolled through old photos, vacations, dinners, birthdays. In every picture, Jonathan was smiling. And in every picture, I was watching him like I was always trying to make sure he was okay, that he was happy, that I was enough. I zoomed in on one image from last summer, his arm around me, his other hand holding a beer. I remembered what happened right after that photo. He told a waitress she had the prettiest eyes he'd ever seen, and when I said, "That's not funny," he laughed and said, "You're so jealous, it's adorable." I smiled for the camera, but inside something had cracked even then. I hadn't realized it until now. That's the day I started leaving. Slowly, quietly, piece by piece. Around noon, Maya handed me a mug of coffee. You look like you're thinking too much. I'm just replaying everything. Don't! I can't help it. She sat across from me. You've got to stop rewriting history to make him look better. He wasn't good to you, Katerina. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. And sometimes that's worse. Her words sank in like cold water. Because she was right. Jonathan wasn't a villain. He was just selfish. And selfish people are harder to hate. Later that afternoon, another number called me unknown. I didn't answer. Then a text popped up, unknown. You can block my number, but you can't block what we had. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My heart wanted to respond. My pride didn't. Finally, I typed back one sentence. Me. You're right. I can't block memories, but I can stop living inside them. Then I blocked that number too. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the room felt like a version of me I didn't recognize anymore. The one who apologized too fast, forgave too easily, and mistook chaos for passion. Maya's apartment was small, but it felt bigger than the place I'd shared with Jonathan, because here I could breathe. Here I didn't have to shrink to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. At 3:00 a.m., I opened my journal for the first time in months. I wrote one line. He said I didn't own him, but maybe that's because he never planned to stay. I closed the book and exhaled. For the first time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. A week passed. 7 mornings of waking up to sunlight instead of tension. 7 nights of silence that didn't feel like punishment. By the 8th day, I had stopped checking my phone for missed calls. That's when the unknown number rang again. I almost ignored it. But something curiosity, maybe closure, made me swipe accept. Katerina. His voice was quiet, almost soft. The kind of tone people use when they know they've lost their leverage. Jonathan, I just want to talk. Please, just one conversation. My first instinct was to hang up. My second was to protect my peace. But the third, the human one, won. Fine, I said, 1 coffee. After that, we're done. The cafe was one of those two perfect places warm lights exposed brick latte art shaped like hearts. The irony didn't escape me. Jonathan was already there when I walked in. He looked smaller somehow. Same confident posture, but his eyes darted toward the door every few seconds like a kid waiting to be called out. "Hey," he said when I sat down. "Hi." The silence between us was thick like two people sitting in the ashes of what used to be a fire. He gestured for the waiter. "You want your usual vanilla latte?" "I'll just take black coffee," I said. He raised a brow. "Still bitter, huh?" "Not anymore," I said. "Just honest." When the drinks came, he leaned forward. "So, you really left?" I almost laughed. "You sound surprised." "I didn't think you'd actually do it. I didn't think you'd ever give me a reason to." He flinched, and for a moment I saw it, the guilt he kept trying to hide behind sarcasm. "Katerina, you know I was joking that night." I met his eyes. "Do I?" "Because the whole table went quiet, Jonathan. Even you knew you crossed a line." "I was drunk." "You were cruel." He looked down, tracing circles on his cup. "You blindsided me. You know that. Just gone. No note, no warning." "There was a note. I didn't see it. Because you weren't looking." He blinked. "What did it say?" "It said you were right. I don't." He stared at me for a long time. "I don't get it." "Of course you don't." I took a sip of my coffee. It burned my tongue, but I didn't flinch. "That's the problem, Jonathan. You never got it." He laughed then bitterly. "So that's it. You're just done." I was done long before I left. I just hadn't realized it yet. "Over a number," he snapped. "Over a stupid waitress." "No. Over 3 years of feeling like I was the only one trying. Over being made to feel crazy for wanting respect. Over being told I was too emotional every time you didn't want to talk." He shook his head, jaw tightening. "You're rewriting history." "No," I said quietly. "I am remembering it correctly for the first time." He looked at me, then really looked. "Maybe for the first time, you used to love me." "I did. Do you still—" That question hurt more than I expected. Because love doesn't vanish, it just grows roots somewhere else. "I don't know," I said finally. "I love what I thought we were. But that version of us doesn't exist anymore." He leaned back. "You're cold." I smiled sadly. "No, Jonathan. I'm calm. You've just never seen me when I'm not trying to keep the peace." He reached across this table, fingers brushing mine. "Can't we just start over?" I pulled my hand back. "Start over from where you still think you didn't do anything wrong." He hesitated. "Everyone flirts. You do it too." "Not to make someone feel small," I said. "Not to prove I can." He didn't respond. I leaned forward. "Do you even know when my birthday is?" He blinked. "Of course. July. Something." "August 12th, I said. "We've celebrated it 3 times." He opened his mouth, closed it again. "What's my mom's name?" What am I allergic to?" He groaned. "Oh, come on, Katerina. What is this, a test?" "No, it's proof. Proof that you don't actually see me. You just use the parts of me that are convenient." His voice cracked. "That's not fair." "No, it's not. And neither was loving someone who made me feel invisible." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The cafe's hum filled the air, the hiss of espresso machines, the faint murmur of other conversations. Finally, Jonathan whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know." I stood up, sliding my chair back slowly. "But you didn't mean not to either, and that's the difference." "Katerina, please. I hope you find what you're looking for," I said, picking up my coat. "But stop pretending it was ever me." When I stepped outside, the winter air hit my face like a clean slate. Behind the cafe window, Jonathan sat motionless, staring down at his coffee. For a second, I thought I'd feel sad, but instead I felt weightless, like I'd finally set something heavy down that I'd been carrying for years without realizing it. As I walked down the street, my phone buzzed. A message from Maya. "Maya. Did you meet him, me?" "Yeah." "Maya. And me." I didn't get closure. I got confirmation. That night, I wrote one more line in my journal. Some people mistake control for love. I finally stopped confusing the two. It's been 3 weeks since that coffee shop conversation. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of peace. 3 weeks of remembering what my own voice sounds like when it's not whispering to keep the peace. My new apartment isn't fancy. It's a small studio on the east side, bare walls, a single window, and the faint hum of traffic below. But it's mine. The first morning I woke up here, sunlight spilled through the curtains and landed on my coffee maker, the same one I carried out of Jonathan's kitchen at 2 a.m. I brewed a cup, sat cross-legged on the floor, and realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to wake up. No heavy silence, no walking on eggshells, just me. And it was enough. Maya dropped by that afternoon with takeout and a plant. It's a peace lily, she said, setting it on the table. You could use both peace and something alive. I smiled. You're too sentimental. She shrugged. You're one to talk. You moved out over a sentence. I laughed softly. No, I moved out because it was the last sentence in a book I should have stopped reading years ago. Maya raised her drink. To new chapters. We clinked glasses, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was toasting to survival. I was toasting to freedom. That night, as I unpacked boxes, I found an old photo of me and Jonathan, one I thought I'd thrown away. We were smiling, arms around each other, pretending to be happy. I studied it for a long moment. He looked proud. I looked small, like I was trying to fit into a frame that was never mine. I didn't cry. I didn't even sigh. I just folded the photo once gently and dropped it into the trash. Sometimes closure isn't a grand speech or dramatic ending. Sometimes it's a quiet decision to stop giving something a place to live in your house or your head. A few days later, I saw Jonathan for the first time since the cafe. It was at a mutual friend's birthday dinner. I didn't plan on going, but Maya convinced me. You can't hide forever, she said. He was there with someone new. Tall, blonde, nervous laugh. The type of woman he could impress easily. When our eyes met across the table, I expected the old ache to return, the urge to explain, to justify. But it didn't. He looked away first, and that was all the closure I needed. After the party, I walked home alone. The city lights shimmered off wet pavement. I passed a cafe, the same kind Jonathan and I used to visit. Inside, a couple was laughing over shared dessert heads close together. For a moment, I wondered if I'd ever feel that again, love without fear, closeness without losing myself. Then I realized I already did, with me. I had learned to be my own safe place. A week later, my coworker Luther asked if I wanted to grab drinks after work. He wasn't charming or polished. He was just kind. The kind of person who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. At the bar, when the bill came, he reached for it. I reached too. Let's split it, I said. He smiled. I asked you out. Then I'll get the next one, I replied before realizing what I'd said. He raised an eyebrow. Next one? I smiled. Maybe. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something gentle, something possible. That night, back in my apartment, I made myself another cup of coffee. I took it to the small balcony where the city stretched out beneath me like a quiet ocean of lights. The mug was warm against my palms, the air was cool, and I whispered to myself, not as comfort, but as truth. He said I didn't own him, and he was right. I never wanted to. I just wanted someone who'd choose to stay. The wind brushed past, carrying the words away into the night. I took a sip of coffee, smiled, and watched the first light of morning rise over the city. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about walking away. It's not about revenge. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that forgot how to breathe. And as the sun broke the horizon, I finally felt it, the quiet kind of happiness that doesn't need permission.